This is the Vinquisition, and I'm Alexis Percival, the Vinquisitor. These videos, I talk about anything wine related that strikes my fancy, from stories to history, culture, and just fun facts, science, anything that I'm finding interesting at the moment. I'm currently at the historic Round Robin Bar in Washington, D.C. at the Willard Hotel. And I was inspired to talk today about Madeira. Madeira is a wine that used to be hugely consumed in vast quantities by Americans, and now most people don't even know what it is, let alone have had it or enjoy it now. So I wanted to talk about this really fascinating thing inspired by our nation's capital. So Madeira is not only the style of wine, but it's in a couple of islands off of the northwest of Morocco, so off of the northwest of the African continent. And in 1490, the Portuguese, who are just starting and really getting into the colonization game, go there, decide that they're going to settle it, they're going to colonize it. And it's thought at the time that it is not inhabited or actively inhabited, I guess is a better way to put it. But the Portuguese are like, this is a really sweet location for trade and for as a stopping off point, right? So it's colonized. It's not just colonized by the Portuguese. There are other people. There are British, there are Dutch, but it is a Portuguese colony. For the time, it operates on a feudal system. You have people that are working the land underneath the ownership of the land. And then the Portuguese decide, you know what? We should get onto the sugarcane game. And it's a really unfortunate, bloody history surrounding sugarcane production, but it's very labor consuming. It's labor intensive to make it and to grow it and to make products with it. So the Portuguese use slaves for the labor in order to produce sugarcane. Now, because of this, and because of this, the location of Madeira, it becomes part of the triangle trade. So you have linen goods being traded, you have alcohol products from the sugarcane being traded, from the Americas to Europe to coastal Africa. So you have this kind of nasty but very lucrative system that's happening. Now, as well as, and this shouldn't surprise anyone, as well as the sugarcane being grown there, there is also wine grapes that are planted, and those are Vitis vinifera grapes that are brought from other parts of Europe, including Malvasia that is brought from Crete. As with many things, the product of Madeira wine is actually a happy accident. So what happens is you have wine, right? And it gets put into casks and it's of varying quality. But also some of the things that are really awful for wine would be aeration, as in a cask, heat, as in the hold of a ship, and movement, as in the rocking of the ship. So the wines are given a little bit of help in that they're fortified with neutral grape spirits, so meaning like a higher alcohol in order to stop the fermentation and stabilize the wine as much as possible. But these ships, the wines go out on these ships, and then, you know, a lot of times they land and they're not that great. They don't taste very good. What happens is some of the wine doesn't get sold, comes back to the island of Madeira on a return trip. And some of the people find that they actually like what's happened to the wine. This rocking motion and the high heat in the hold of the ship has actually, well, it's cooked the wine in a process that we now call Madeirization, which, unless you do it on purpose, is considered a wine fault. But it does give some unique flavors to the wine. And so they're like, maybe we can work with this. And so I find Madeira so fascinating because essentially what you're doing is you're ruining the wine before it can get ruined in the situation, right? You're saying, we are going to ruin this wine so thoroughly that anything that happens to it can't make it any worse. And in fact, we've made it in a way that's actually quite enjoyable. So isn't that so cool? This is why you have Madeiras that can be 200 years old. The only thing you need to do is make sure that, you know, they're corked and stoppered correctly so that you don't get detritus in there. You don't want dust or bugs in there, but actually they are impervious. We are talking bulletproof wines. So this all starts 1500s. A lot of this activity is happening. In the 1600s, sugarcane starts to crash. It's getting the production from Brazil is much more efficient. So really, the market is moving towards like, hey, sugarcane's not really so smart for us. We can't really compete, but this Madeira wine that we're producing is massively popular. It becomes so popular in the Americas that 95% of the production from the island is consumed by what will become the US. And you have to understand, most of the wine that people are drinking tastes bad. So from the time of the Mayflower and even before, people want their alcohol products, but they don't have enough grains to make beer. They don't have the cereal grains that are required. They try making wine, it's dreadful. They try making wine from the local grapes, like we think of Concord grapes. They're not able to do it well. And also they don't really have most of the early colonizers don't have the experience to make any wine of quality, right? So everything tastes dreadful. So you can imagine that concurrently rum production, sugarcane, and this Madeira that's coming across these trade routes are hugely popular, right? You can buy it, you open a bottle and keep it open, and you have this delicious drink. And also, it's what's considered a hot beverage, meaning that there's a pretty high alcohol content that's happening here, just like rum. So that's going to be favored above your lower alcohol wines, beverages. So, fun facts. In addition to all this fun stuff, I would say, the colonial rebellion is actually, we all know that it's incited by the heavy taxation. But on one shipment of John Hancock's that contained a large quantity of Madeira, this kicked off and predated the Boston Tea Party because people were so upset that their Madeira was going to be so heavily taxed as it was being unloaded that they rioted. So we always think of the Boston Tea Party, but actually people were pretty ticked off about their liquor being marked up so much. Especially, England is just sort of taking and not giving. So into the drink with the drink, sort of. Of course, I don't really think that they wasted the Madeira by tossing it to the bay. But it is such a part of our American history that Madeira is used at the inauguration as to toast George Washington. It is also said to be what was toasted with and consumed at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So this is a beverage that is so woven into the fabric of early America as we think of it now. You might be wondering, why is it popularized? Yes, okay, it's on the trade routes, but what's really happening is that the British and the Portuguese have very strong trade relations. And so there's a lot of British people who are actually settled on the island of Madeira for business purposes. And so they're really consolidating all of their trade routes. Madeira becomes a big part of that, and they take control of that island wine economy. And so we're all along all the British colonies, we're then going to see a lot of that Madeira product. However, turn of into the 1900s, we have a just catastrophic, perfect storm of things that go wrong for Madeira and the Madeira wine trade. We have phylloxera, which is the pest that wipes out Vitis vinifera across Europe and anywhere with Vitis vinifera grapes. We have powdery mildew. The sugarcane gets ripped out, and the people on Madeira replant with American hybrids that are resistant to phylloxera, but they're not making not that hybrids can't make high quality wines, but in this case, they're not able to make high quality wines, or certainly not what they had been trying to do previously. Also have prohibition in the United States, so the market just, really collapses. Trade slows down, and also the ships don't need to stop in Madeira anymore. We have the opening of the Suez Canal and other trade routes, and so Madeira just kind of becomes a backwater. You don't need to stop there anymore. So why should we care about this historic beverage? It can be a little bit confusing. The labeling can be a little bit confusing. Even just in the name, we have Madeira from Madeira. But I think it's something that's worth trying. It is delicious. It is cool. So a couple things about it. There are 4 white grapes that we're using, generally speaking. Now, this is a very short video, so I'm just understand I'm making gross generalizations here. But there are four main white grapes that we're using, and in this order, they also are indicating the level of sweetness or residual sugar that's left in the beverage. So starting with Malvasia, which is also known as Mumsy, there's a Boal or Boal, Verdeo, and Cercial. And so the point at which we add the neutral grain spirits to stop the fermentation is going to retain that residual sugar. So starting with your Malvasia, that's going to be the sweetest, and your Cercial is going to be the driest. However, 85% of the Madeira that's produced is made with a red grape, and it's Negromole. So if there's no label of what it is, it's most likely going to be this made with this red grape varietal. Now, I'm not going to go into the complexities of the labeling because the labels are indicative of, generally speaking, the aging process for how long and the quote unquote quality process of the production. Because you have to remember, what I was saying was, in that the ruination of the wine, they're mimicking what will happen on a ship. Now, there's very commercial ways to do that, and then there's much more hands-on and authentic ways of mimicking what is going to happen on these ships, where we're cooking the wine in these casks, and we're basically like trying to cause these controlled faultedness, I guess, in the wines. It's a good way to say it. So I'd say do your research. However, like another thing that's so neat about these wines is that the laws can change and the labeling can change in Madeira, but because they're held back for so long and they're released so much later onto the market, that a law could be current, but might not be the Madeira that you have on the shelf or at the restaurant, because things are changing much faster than the release of the wines is actually going to show, especially if you get your hands on some really old bottles, because no, so it's always good to just go on the Google, find out, do a little bit of research on what your actual bottle was and when it was released. But I'd say very safe bet. Let Psalms do their job. If you see a Madeira by the glass on a digestif list at a restaurant, chances are they tasted it, they picked it. Try it, give it a shot, because it's such a cool thing, and you can cheers and taste a little bit of American history. And that's what I have to say about Madeira. I'll see you next time on the Vinquisition.